Hi everyone, I'm Vecchia Zim, and this is a tutorial for creating custom music for Super Mario World ROM hacks. I'll be using the Windows 10 OS. To clarify, this is not a tutorial about how to insert custom music into a hack. There are already several videos on that topic you can find, but rather how to create the music in the first place, whether you're porting music from another game, or composing or arranging or remixing something new. Much of the information here is taken from the SMW Central website, in particular Wakana's music porting tutorial. It's a great tutorial, you should definitely check it out, and I've included a link in the description. So, why make a video tutorial too? Well, a few reasons. First, some people just learn more easily from videos than from text instructions. Second, there are a few traps and complications that I encountered when I was starting that hopefully I can draw your attention to before you run up against them. Finally, Wakana with his tutorial made a point to ensure that it was as accessible as possible for people without musical backgrounds, people coming more from programming or game development. This video will be a little different. If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you have only basic literacy with both computers and music. In other words, you can get around on your own PC, but you don't need any advanced knowledge about programming or coding. And I'm assuming that you have very basic music reading skills, like 1 year of piano lessons, middle school band, that kind of thing, not a college degree in music theory. So do you know what a quarter note is? Can you find C and treble clef and so on? If that's not you, that's okay. This video should still be helpful, but you might need to supplement it with Wakana's tutorial, which again, you should check out regardless. And if you have more experience than that, either on the programming or musical side, that's great. The process will be that much more intuitive for you. In any case, I'll be deliberately going very slowly and covering things as thoroughly as possible, maybe more thoroughly than necessary, just because I'd rather over-explain some things than leave anyone in the dust. So, what is this video going to cover? Basically, we'll be going over the very general framework workflow from beginning to end of creating custom music, starting with setup and ending with uploading your music to the SMW Central website. In other words, this is the bare minimum amount of information you need to make a track that will function in SMW. We will not be covering how to make your music sound good. We will be covering how to make your music exist. There are lots of great features you can use to enhance your music, really important features that you'll definitely want to know, but we'll be saving those for later videos. For now, we're just going over the base necessities. So there's good news and bad news when it comes to making SMW music. The bad news is that you can't just create a sound file like an MP3 or a WAV and insert it into your hack. It has to be a certain file type called an SPC, and we need some special software to make those, and we'll have to do some coding. The good news is that the software is free and easy to get, and the coding is really intuitive if you have any music reading ability. The barrier for entry here is really low, so no reason to get nervous. You certainly don't need any fancy hardware. I'm doing all this on my crappy laptop. To get started, there are 4 things we're going to need. One is a text editor, like Notepad. You almost certainly have one of these on your PC. I have it pinned to my taskbar for convenience. Next, you'll need to download 2 apps from SMW Central. You can find these on Wakana's tutorial, which again is linked in the description, but I'll Google SMW Central Music Porting. Tutorial. There we go. And this will, once it loads, give me the page that I want. And I'm going to scroll down and find this. What we want are these 2 pieces of software, Add Music, and this SPC 700 player. I already have these installed, so I won't go through the whole process here, but you'll want to click on this link and then click here to download. You might get some of these scary program is unrecognized pop-ups. If so, don't worry about it. And they'll come in a zipped file. Find my downloads here. These two zip files. You'll just want to unzip them, and then you'll get these folders. In the Add Music folder, look for AMK GUI. If you're a computer person, you know what GUI means. If not, it just stands for Graphical User Interface, and it means that the program will open in a window like any other program you're used to using, rather than having to do some intimidating command line stuff. In the SPC 700 folder, find this SPC Play icon with the green triangle here. And that's the other program that you'll need. I have both of those pinned to the taskbar too. Now, Wakana also says here that you need a piano roll MIDI editor that you can find in a DAW, a digital audio workstation. Those are programs like FL Studio or Ableton, Reaper, so on. Here's the thing. This part is technically optional. You don't actually need a DAW. You may want one. It may be very helpful. There are definitely some ways a DAW can be useful. It's going to depend on what you're trying to do and how you like to work. When we get to the point in the process where it comes in handy, I will point that out. But I can say that I've not once used my DAW for creating SMW music, so I'm living proof that it's possible without one. The fourth and final thing you'll need, if you don't have it already, is a decent set of headphones. They don't need to be top of the line, but you're writing music and it seems obvious, but you need to be able to hear what you're writing. A lot of the people who play SMW hacks listen on headphones when they play, so you want to hear what they're going to hear. At the very least, your built-in computer speakers almost certainly won't cut it. So let's open up Notepad, Add Music, and SPC 700 and take an overview of the general workflow we'll be using. So the way this works is that Notepad is where you enter your music as a text file. It's equivalent to entering music into tracks in a DAW or entering notes into notation software like Finale or Sibelius, if that's what you're used to. Add Music takes what you entered in Notepad and converts it into a sound file into the SPC that we want. An SPC 700 is our playback device. It's like VLC or Windows media player. It's the thing that allows you to listen to the file you've created. You can see it has volume control and play and stop, all that good stuff. So you write the music in Notepad, you convert it to an SPC and Add Music, and you listen to your SPC in SPC 700. Before we create our own text file, let's go through this once with an existing text file. You see that Add Music comes populated with text files already. This is music from the original SMW game. You'll see it's divided into global and local songs. Global songs are the ones that can appear in any level depending on what the player does. You see the P-switch music and the Starman, the invincibility music, for example. Local songs are specific to the level or overworld section you're in, so background level music basically, and these are the ones we're interested in for the moment. So let's take one of these text files and run it to create an SPC. First we need to click Porter mode. If we don't, then when we click run, Add Music is going to think we're trying to insert the song into a hack. We're not ready for that yet. We just want to create the sound file in the first place. You'll notice it also automatically checks the autoplay SPC box 2. We're going to uncheck that for the moment. This is the only time we're going to uncheck it. Having it checked saves you several very annoying clicks, so the vast majority of the time you're going to want it checked. But right now we don't want the SPC to play automatically, so we'll leave it unchecked for the moment. Let's select piano, and we'll click the run button. This is what creates the SPC, creates the sound file. And since we unchecked the autoplay SPC box, it won't play back automatically, but we can find the SPC we just created in Add Music's SPCs folder. And there we go. And we also get the version that has the Yoshi drums with it. So let's right click and open with and choose an app. And I've already done this, but basically what you want to do is set SPC 700 player as the default player for the SPC file type. This is actually pretty important, I've found. For whatever reason, if you don't do that, then you can get some kind of gnarly looking errors that pop up. So I absolutely recommend doing this. You might need to look for it, go into more apps to find it. So when I click on OK, you're going to hear some music you know and love. Hopefully it's not too loud. There we go. You all know that one, I'm sure. So the only difference between what we just did and what we want to do is that we'll be writing our own text file rather than using one of the built-in songs. So just to reiterate, we're going to write the music as a text file on Notepad. We're going to bring that text file into Add Music. We'll make sure that we have both Porter mode and autoplay SPC checked. And then we'll listen to it using SPC 700. One last step before we start to compose. We need to prep our text file so Add Music can read it and it works with SMW. You can save this basic setup as a template if you want, but it's honestly not that hard to reproduce. At the top, we need to put pound or hashtag AMK2. This just makes it so that Add Music knows how to handle our text file. Next, we're going to add our channels. These are basically lines of music, like tracks in a DAW or staves in traditional notation. In SMW, you can have a maximum of 8 channels, and because we're in computer land, we're going to number them 0 to 7. Again, using the pound sign hashtag. You don't have to use all 8. You can delete some if you don't want to use them, but 8 is the most you can have. A few things to keep in mind. First, you can only have one note at a time in any given channel, so you'll have a maximum of 8 notes at once. If you need to write a chord where you have several notes at once, of course you can do that. You'll just need to separate the notes of the chord into separate channels. This may seem limiting, but it's really not. You can make a lot happen with 8 notes at once, especially since you can switch between instruments within a single channel whenever you need to. Second, channels 6 and 7, the last two, prioritize sound effects. That means that if you have music in those channels and a sound effect needs to happen, the sound effect will replace the music at that moment. And if you think of all the effects that happen during the game, jumping, coins, power-ups, damage, all of that, there are sound effects happening constantly. This doesn't mean that you can't use these channels for music. You can and you should. You just need to be thinking about what you should use them for. In general, you want to put short notes and looping patterns in these channels, things that the player won't even notice if they cut out. The worst thing to put in channels 6 and 7 are long, prominent melodic notes. Third, it's very important to know that when you run your text file, it will only play back for the duration of the shortest channel. So if you have, say, 45 minutes of music in channel 0, 30 seconds in channel 1, and 15 seconds in channel 2, you will only hear the first 15 seconds, and then the music will loop back to the beginning and start over. You will never hear the rest of the other two channels past the 15-second point. In fact, a little troubleshooting worth remembering. Sometimes you might run your file and everything will look like it's okay and you won't get any error messages, but you won't hear anything. It's like nothing will happen, good or bad. Check to make sure that you don't have any empty channels, because what might be happening is what we're talking about now. The SBC will only be as long as your shortest channel. So if you have an empty channel, your shortest channel is 0 seconds long and you won't hear anything at all. So if you're not using all 8 channels, it's best to delete the channels you're not going to use. You can always add them back in later if you decide to add another instrument or musical line. One obvious way to solve the different channel lengths problem is to just always have the same amount of music in every channel. But sometimes you might just want to work on one channel without worrying about the others, especially if you're not sure what's going to go in those other channels. If you look at Wakana's text file template, you'll see this bunch of gobbledygook at the end of each channel. It looks like this. And you don't know this yet, but that's actually a giant rest. The R means rest, the 2 means it's a half rest, and the brackets are a kind of repeat sign, and the 255 is how many times you repeat. So yes, a very long rest. That's there precisely because of this issue with different channel lengths. Having a huge rest at the end ensures that even if you enter different amounts of music in each channel will be long enough to allow you to hear all of what you've entered in each channel. I actually prefer to handle this issue a little bit differently, which we'll talk about when we start entering our music, but this method works fine if you want to use it. So just a few final remarks before we start actually entering some music. First, a warning to the musicians who are watching. What we're about to do is technically writing computer code, but fortunately it's in a language called MML, or Music Macro Language, and modern MML is specifically designed to be easy and intuitive for people who can read basic music notation. In fact, my guess is that it's probably easier for musicians to use MML most of the time, at least getting started, than for programmers who don't read music. But it's certainly possible for anyone to pick it up. Now, all we need to know is what notes we want to enter. And here's the part where Wakana recommends that you use a DAW, a digital audio workstation like FL Studio, specifically the MIDI piano roll that most DAWs have. The reason is that if you enter a MIDI file into a DAW and look at the piano roll, you'll be able to see what the notes are. It'll show you what's a C and what's an F sharp, and it'll give you a decent sense of the rhythm to half notes, quarter notes, and so on. The rhythms are usually represented with bars, and sometimes it's not clear exactly how long they are. Again, it totally works, and if that's the best approach for you, go for it. And there are other uses for a DAW that you might want later on, like creating external samples. Some industrious people have made tools that convert MIDI to MML directly. But at the end of the day, all we're doing right now is trying to figure out what pitches and rhythms we want to enter. So if you already know the notes that you want, you don't actually need a DAW right now. So if you're used to traditional music notation, you can get the notes from there. You can even just compose directly into Notepad in MML if you want. I actually sketch my music using pencil and paper and then transfer it into MML. It's whatever works for you. For this demo, we'll be taking our music from traditional notation, a short excerpt of a keyboard piece by Bach, this Symphonia number 14 in B-flat major. Not a lot of Bach shows up in SMW ROM hacks, but every now and then you see it. I think there's some in Storks, for example. But before we get to that, we're going to set our global volume and tempo. We'll put both of these in channel 0. And we'll use W for the global volume. You can set this anywhere from 0 to 255. It's actually more accurate to say anywhere from 33 to 255. If you set it between 0 and 32, it'll work. You won't get an error, but you won't hear anything. So it's basically like setting it to mute. So 33 is your softest audible volume. 255 is the loudest. And I prefer to call it, I call it a global volume, but I actually think of it more as sort of like a maximum volume. That's because you can set the channel volumes independently, each channel, give it a different volume, but you can't make the individual channels louder than the global. You can only make them softer. So global essentially puts an upper bound on the volume. For now, I'll just set it at the max volume, just to make sure we can hear it. The final volume you're going to want to choose is it's going to depend on the music you write and the samples that you use. The end goal is to make something that's well balanced to your hack, so that it doesn't drown everything out, but it's still something you're able to hear. Now we're going to set the tempo with T. And the first thing to know is that the T value we're going to use is not beats per minute. It is not the thing that you're used to seeing on a metronome. Fortunately, it's a pretty easy conversion to make. You basically take the BPM and multiply it by 0.41. Technically, it's 0.4096, and round it to the closest whole number. So our example has quarter note equals 76. So we're going to do some quick math. Get out the calculator. And we'll multiply 76 times 0.41. And we get about 31. So that's what we'll use for T. It's important to remember that this T value corresponds to the tempo of the quarter note. So if your music is in 6/8 and the BPM corresponds to the dotted quarter note, or if it's in cut time with a half note beat, you'll just have to do a little extra math. It's not difficult. We'll get into more detail about that in a separate video dedicated to all the sorts of different rhythmic features that are available. One last note about tempo. You want to keep your T value from getting too high. If the tempo gets too fast, you'll run into performance issues with the game. It's not a hard ceiling, but once you get up towards 70, things can start to go wrong. So you speedcore fans might be disappointed, but it's not as much of a limitation as it sounds. First of all, remember that the T value is not BPM, it's not beats per minute. T70 actually corresponds to almost 171 beats per minute. And even if 171 is still too slow for you, you can always cut the T value in half and then cut all the note values in half too, changing quarters to eighths, 16ths to 32nds, etc., and get your music the way you sound with that smaller T value. The last thing we'll do before entering the actual notes is to choose an instrument. SMW has a set of sort of 32 built-in instruments. Not all of them are populated, and there are ways you can tweak these. You can also bring in outside samples. But for now, I'm just going to choose 16 since I know it's going to get the job done, and we'll designate that with the @ sign in each channel. You'll notice here that I have 3 parts for my Sinfonia, so I'll only be using these first 3 channels. And as I mentioned earlier, it's safer just to delete the channels that I'm not going to need. Okay, so let's write some notes. First we need to designate an octave, and we actually have music in 3 different octaves. The way that the octaves work is that they go from C to B, and which octaves are available to you depends on what instrument you're using, but these 6 are the ones that are most likely to be available to you. Sometimes the bass instruments only work, say, from 1 to 3, and a lot of instruments don't have this 6th octave either. But yeah, just remember that each octave goes from C to B, and every time you cross from B up to C, up to the next octave, you'll need to tell Add Music to switch octaves. So our first note in our top part here is that F, and that is in this octave, O5. Our first note in the middle part is this B flat, which is in O4. And our first note in the lowest part is this B flat here, which is in O3. I should save at this point. And we'll just call this Bach demo. Every time you run your file, you'll need to save first, or else it'll run the old version of the file. It won't actually bring in the updates that you make. So you're going to want to save often. Now, as I mentioned before, we need every channel to either be all the same length or to have enough stuff in it that we can hear every note that's in there. So again, one option we have is to write a giant rest and put it at the end of each channel. What I prefer to do is, if I know how long the piece is going to be in advance, I'd rather just fill every channel with the total length of the song that I'm writing. So this Sinfonia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 measures. And so I'm going to fill each one of these with 7 measures of rest. And as I said before, if I want to rest, I just say R. And the way to designate the length of the rest, or a note, any rhythm whatsoever, is to name it after its note value in conventional notation, in particular the denominator. So in other words, a quarter note is going to be a 4, an eighth note is going to be an 8, a 32nd note is going to be 32, and that means that a whole note or a whole rest is going to be a 1. So what I want is R1, that's one measure, that's one 4/4 measure of rest, and I'm going to want 7 of those in all 3 of my channels. I'm putting them on separate lines just so I can more easily sort of visualize how all 3 parts work together. Spaces don't matter, you don't have to put any in there, but if you don't include them, it just is really hard to actually look at it and see what's going on. So using your spaces judiciously to actually be able to read what you're writing is really important. Why don't we start here with our first notation. Let's start with this middle voice. So that's going to be in channel 1. I'll save just for purposes of paranoia. And right now we could actually run this right away. We could go into Add Music and bring in the song and run it. But right now it would just be 7 measures of silence, which we don't need yet. But for now, let's actually put some notes in first. So we've got a B flat, and the beautiful part about, again, we're going to use channel 1 of MML is that, again, it's very easy to learn if you read music already. So a B flat is going to be a B with a minus sign. So flats are minus sign, sharps are plus signs. And as I said before, a quarter note is just going to be a 4. You see that we have a tie. Again, ties are very intuitive. You use the caret, that is the shift 6, and that acts like a tie. Again, we see the 16th note, so we're just going to add a 16. Okay, so next we have 3 16th notes, a B flat 16th note, B minus 16, an A 16th note, and a G 16th note. 2 8th notes, the F8 and the G8, and then a D 16th note, an E flat 16th note, and an F 8th note, and that's our first full bar of that middle line. Again, I want to make sure that all my channels are the same length, so I've deleted that first bar of rest and replaced it with this line of music. Again, I'll save, always save before you run, and let's bring it in to add music. So we're going to add a new song. There we go. It'll take me right to the folder that I want, rock demo. And let's run it. It should play automatically because, again, we have autoplay SBC checked. And if all goes well, it'll run and we'll hear just that first bar of the middle part. Brilliant. Most beautiful music ever. And we'll go ahead and stop that. Eventually that'll loop around and start playing it again from the beginning. But we're in good shape so far. So we've got this bar written. Now we're going to write this measure. The third part, the bass part, and we'll put that in channel 2. Now this is all 8th notes, so we're going to take a little shortcut here. We're going to use the letter L. We're just going to say L8, and what this will do is it'll, I don't need to actually rewrite the rhythmic value every time. I can just put the pitches in, and it'll assume that they're 8th notes until I tell it differently. So the first note will be this B flat. Now remember, anytime you cross C, you're changing octaves, right? It's sort of like Monopoly. You know, anytime you pass go, you get $200. Anytime you cross C, you change octaves. And the best way to change octaves is with your greater than or less than sign. So if I want to go an octave up, I'm going to use the greater than sign. If I were going an octave down, I would use the less than sign. If that might seem a little counterintuitive, potentially, after all, the numbers of the octaves get smaller the lower you get, so you would think that if you wanted to go down an octave, you would use that greater than sign. I think the reason, the way to sort of remember it is that you want to think of lower octaves as being somehow bigger. You know, low instruments are bigger than high instruments, right? A double bass is bigger than a violin, and a tuba is bigger than a trumpet. You know, wavelengths are bigger in the low register than they are up high. So just think low equals big, and you'll remember whether to use greater than or less than. So I'm crossing C, so I need to make sure I tell it to change octaves, and I'm going up an octave. So I'm going from B flat, and then using this greater than sign to go up an octave to here D, and then C. Now I'm going back down an octave, so I'm going to use the less than sign to B flat, A, G, F, and E flat. And again, because I've used L8 here, I don't need to reiterate the rhythmic value. It will assume that all of those are 8th notes. Let's check to make sure that all went well. I'll save again. Again, always save before you run. success. And as it happens, since this top part, the first measure is just a rest, I've already written that in, so we're all set. Measure 1 done, only 6 to go. We could do these in any order, but let's stay with the channel 2 here with our third part. Now we have a series of quarter notes. If I want to, I can switch to L4, and I have D, F, G. I'm crossing octaves again, so I need to include the greater than or less than sign. Again, I'm going up an octave, so it's going to be a greater than sign, and I have the C. And there we go. Measure 2 of the third part down. I'll save again. And now let's do the middle part here. So this is measure 2, middle part, which again, the middle part we're putting in channel 1. 4/16 notes, I'll just write these directly. Notice that I've gone from F to B flat. I've crossed C, so I have to change octaves. And again, I'm going down an octave this time, which means I'll use the less than sign. And I have B flat, that's just B minus 16. I have F 16, B flat 16. Now again, I'm crossing C, so I need to go up an octave. That's the greater than sign, to a D 16. And then I have a C 8th note. And then I have E flat 8th note tied to an E flat 8th note. I could use that tie notation we've talked about before. So that's an E minus 8, and then use that caret, shift 6 to the 8. For performance reasons, I'm just going to simplify that notation in the code as a quarter note, since those two 8th notes will add up to that. For humans, it's a little bit easier to read as a pair of tied 8th notes, but the computer is fine with it, so we'll leave it as a quarter note. We have 2 more 16th notes, the D 16 and the E natural. The computer doesn't care about the natural sign. If you just put E, it'll call that an E natural. And then we have a dotted 8th note, and again, if MML is brilliantly designed for musicians, so the way we write this rhythm is, again, it's an E natural, and it's an 8th note, and it's a dotted 8th note, so we'll put a dot, a period, and there you've got your dotted 8th. And then we end the bar with 2 32nd notes, so that D 32 and E 32. All right, so in order to finish up measure 2, we're just going to need the top part. We have an 8th rest. Again, rest is R, so we'll say R8. And we have an F 8th note tied to an F 16th note. Again, we could write that directly as an F8 tie 16, but we can also write this as a dotted 8th note. It adds up to the same thing, so that's what we'll do. 3 16th notes, E flat 16, D 16, C 16. We've just crossed over C, so we're going to need to do the octave change, and since we're going down an octave, we'll use the less than sign. B flat 8. Going back up the octave, again, we're crossing C, so we'll use the greater than sign for the D8, and we're crossing over C again, so we'll use the less than sign to get that A 16th note, and then B flat 16th note. And yes, we are crossing C again. Again, the crossing point is between B and C, so we need to adjust the octave here as well. We're going up the octave, therefore we're going to use the greater than sign for that final C 8th note. And we'll save and run, and just check to make sure now that we have 2 good measures that we like. Sounds good to me. And from now on, it's basically more of the same. We could pretty much do this in any order that we wanted to. But why don't we start, why don't we stay with the line we've been working on? That's this top part, and we'll go into measure 3. 4/16 notes. Again, we're crossing that C-B divide, so we're crossing down from C to F, so we'll need to put the octave change in. Going down an octave, that means the less than sign. 4/16 notes, we have F16, octave cross up, so that's greater than. Another F16, D16, octave cross down, it's the less than sign. B flat 16, octave cross up, that's the greater than sign, sorry. E flat 8, we have another G, 8th tied to 16th, again we'll just write that as a dotted 8th. 3/16, E flat 16, C 16, octave cross down for A 16, octave cross up for C8, and then F8, and that's the end of that bar. Let's do this middle part, measure 3, and this middle bit there. So again, we'll move to channel 1, and we have an F quarter note, then a series of 8th notes, and that's enough that we can do the L8 function. So we have G, B flat, E flat, G, and A. And again, I don't need to reiterate the 8 each time for all of those because I'm using L8. Now I'm going to switch to a different note value here, so we will need to actually tell MML what note value we're using. Again, I could write this as a tie, as an 8th note to a 16th note, but I'll write it as a dotted 8th note. And we're crossing the BC divide, so we'll use the greater than sign for a C dotted 8th. And that fills up measure 3 of line 2. So let's go to measure 3 of the bass line. Again, we're putting that bass line in channel 2. So we have a D, and we will use the tie here because that's the only way to write this value. So we have a D4, use the caret for a tie, then a shift 6, and then a 16th note. So we're tying the quarter note to the 16th. We have 3 more 16ths, the D 16th, we have an octave cross down, B flat 16th, G 16th, octave cross up for that C 8th note. And then we have an E flat, 8th tied to 16th. We'll just write it as a dotted 8th, 8 dot. And then 3/16, we have a C 16th, octave cross down for the A 16th, and then the F 16th. Let's save and listen. 3 bars down, we're getting there. Works. Hopefully at some point I'll make a mistake and we'll do some troubleshooting, but for now we seem clean. And great, let's go on to the next bar. Let's stay on the line we're on. This is measure 4 and the bass line. Again, we're putting that bass line in channel 2. We have a B flat, which is again a quarter note tied to a 16th note, so we'll say 4 caret 16, 3/16 notes, that's B flat 16, A 16, G 16, 2 8th notes, F8 and G8, 16th note D, 16th note E flat, and 8th note F. Okay. And now let's do this bar here, the middle middle part of measure 4. We already have this 16th note here as part of this dotted 8th note, so we'll start on the 16th note F. again, we're crossing that CB divide, so we need to go down an octave. So that's that. And we have 3/16 notes, an F16, a B flat 16, an octave up, a D16, octave down, G8, B flat, put a space there, G8, B flat 8, A8, and a long run of 16th notes that actually continues down on this next line. So we'll definitely use the L16 here, L16. That's a D, E flat, F, G, E flat, and F, and that fills up the rest of the measure. And let's do this bit here. Bar 4, top line. Should be a short one. D4, E4, F, 8th note, octave down, B flat, quarter note. And then we have an A tied to an A. Again, these are both 8th notes. We could write it as A8, caret 8, but quarter note works just as well, so let's do that. A4. All right, so almost done. Last line. Let's again stay on the line we're currently on, and so we'll do measure 5 of the top part. We already have this tie in, so next we'll do the G, which is G. Again, it's an 8th tied to an 8th, but for simplicity, we'll do G4 as a quarter note. We'll do F4 also as a quarter note, E flat 4 as a quarter note. And then this D, which is a quarter note tied to a 16th again, sorry, an 8th note tied to a 16th, which again we'll write as a dotted 8th. That fills up that measure for us. And I'll save. And let's go to this middle part. Again, a giant line of 16th notes. We've already got L16 here going for us, so we don't need to reiterate that. We'll just write the pitches. So we've got a D, an F, down an octave, B flat, up an octave, C, D, E flat, C, D, down an octave for the B flat, up an octave for the D, down an octave for the G and the A and the B flat, and up an octave for the C, down an octave for the A flat and the B flat. That should finish up the bar. Let's make sure I actually have 16 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So at least the right number of notes there. And now let's write the bass line for measure 5. That's this one here. And we have a B flat 8th note. We've crossed the CB divide, so we have to change octaves. We're going down an octave, so we'll use less than. We have B flat 8, up an octave, E flat 8, down an octave, B flat 16, up an octave, put the space in there, C16, D16, down an octave, G8, up an octave, C8, down an octave, G16, A flat 16, B flat 8. And that finishes off that measure. And we're getting near the end. Let's stay on the bar we're on, measure 6 in the bass line. Stay in the same octave for this low E flat, that's E flat 8. Then we're up an octave for this E flat 8th tied to 16th. Again, we can write it as a dotted 8th, so that's what we'll do. Up an octave again for that C 16th, down an octave for the A 16th, F 16th, D8, G8, and then a bunch of 16th notes in a row, so we'll use that L16 for the E flat, C, F, and A, all of which are within the same octave. And now let's fill in this middle part here. That should be pretty straightforward. We've got G quarter note, an F eighth note, and a rest eighth note, that's R as always, and half rest. So again, it's an R2 for that half rest. And let's fill up, let's go to this bar here, top part, 6th measure. We've already got the tie in, so let's go straight to this. We've already got this first D, so let's go straight to the G. G16, E flat 16, C16. We have A8, then we're going up an octave for that C 8th note tied to a 16th note. Again, we'll use the dotted 8th note notation. Going down an octave for the F16 and the B flat 16. Up an octave for that D 16th. And then C8, and then E flat. And it's an 8th tied to an 8th, so again, we'll use the quarter note notation there. And let's just finish this off. We're almost done. So we already have this 8th note as part of this E flat quarter note there. So we just need to finish up with a D quarter note, a C 8th note, and a D half note. And the final bar of the middle part, that's this one here. We have a B flat, but we've gone up an octave, so let's make sure to get that octave up in. And now we'll have a B flat quarter note tied to a B flat 16th note, so we'll just notate it like that. And then 3 16th notes. We have a B flat 16, an A 16, and a G 16, and finally an F sharp half note. Again, just like flats are done with minuses, sharps are done with pluses. So F sharp, and that's a half note like that. Last measure, this final bar of the lowest part. Again, we're already in this sort of L16 land here, so we don't have to actually write the 16s. We do need to say down an octave to get from this A here to this B flat there. So we have a B flat 16th note. We go up an octave for the next B flat 16th note. G 16th, D 16th. Again, I don't need to write 16 because we already said L16 for these. And then, but now I do need to say that this is a quarter note, so it's an E flat 4 followed by a D half note 2. Now, if I did everything right, this should be it. We should be done. This should be a success. So I saved. Always save before you run. And let's take a listen. I'm so glad I screwed up. I don't know if any of you noticed where I screwed up. You probably noticed I screwed up probably several minutes ago, but it was right in here. I think I left this D as a 16th note, and it should be an 8th, but let's check. Where's my measure 5? Again, I have each measure on a different line, which is helpful. There it is, D16. I'm so glad I screwed that up, so glad. So this is an 8th note, not a 16th note. And now it's fixed. Now I don't know if that's the only mistake, but that's definitely the mistake I heard. So I just saved, and let's run it one more time. You should get used to making mistakes. You'll make a lot of them. we'll stop that for now. Good, that wasn't bad. One mistake. I think I can live with that for now. Okay, well that's it. We're done for now. There's of course plenty more to learn, stuff that's really important. Certainly you're going to want to learn about looping and repeats. It's really important for optimization. You also want to learn about things like panning and echo, vibrato, all of this stuff that can really make your SBC really come to life. But those are topics for other videos outside of the scope of this one. But if you can't wait, again, check out Wakana's tutorial. And also check out the readmes. So go into Add Music and find this readme files folder. And these have some really great information about how to use some of the other features that are available to you to make your SBC sound really good. We just have one more thing we're going to do, and that is talk about how to upload your file to SMW Central. Don't have to do this, of course, but it's just the sort of easiest way to make sure that you are sharing your stuff with the world and getting it out there for people to hear. So before we head to the site to do that, one optional thing we can do is add a comment. So this will be something that's visible to people on the website. So just to give them a little bit more information about where the music comes from. So in order to do this, we'll do hashtag SBC and a curly bracket. And there are four things you can add. The first one is author. Technically this is Bach, but I'll put my name. Next we can put game, and this is for ports, music taken from other games and brought into Super Mario World. This doesn't come from a different game, so we'll just put custom. Next we can put a comment. This is anything you want to say. I'll just say demo. And finally a title, and I'll put Sinfonia 14. And again, this doesn't affect anything about the way the SBC sounds. It's just it's helpful information for people when they're checking out your file. There are some character limits here, so you don't want to get too long with any of these. Okay, so let's head to SMW Central. Here's the porting tutorial. You'll need to make an account, log in, and head to SMW Music on the side, and here's this submit file link that we want. And you can read all of the rules here about how to submit. I'll scroll to the bottom where the entry fields are here for submission. First thing we need to do is choose a file, and the file has to be a zip file that includes your text file and your SPC. And if you have external samples, those as well. We don't have external samples, so we'll just need to zip together the text file and the SPC. So let's do that. So let's find your text file will be in this music folder. There it is, Bach demo. And your SPC will be in the SPCs folder. There it is, Bach demo. I'm going to make a new folder here called submission zips, just to keep my brain organized. And we'll copy both of those into that folder. So here's a Bach demo. We'll right click and copy and bring that text file. We'll copy that text file into here. We'll paste it into here, I should say. There it is. And now we'll do the exact same thing with our SPC. There's our Bach demo SPC. Right click, copy. And again, we'll copy it into here. Paste. There we go. We got both of them. Again, we don't have any samples to include, so this is all we need. our text file and our SPC. We'll check both of them, right click again, and we'll send it to a compressed folder. And there it is. I'll leave the name the same, and now I've got my zip file. So when I go back here to my choose file, I'm going to choose that zip. Sorry, double clicked. And there it is. There's my zip. Name, again, this is Sinfonia 14. Now we need to find the insert size, and this information is in your stats folder. Again, going into add music, and there's the stats folder. It'll already exist. And find Bach demo, there it is. And here we go. So we're looking for the song total data size. The 0x is already completed for you, so we just need this 0116. 0116. Next, we want to type. This is just a song. Sample usage, none. We don't have any external samples. Source, again, it's not from another game, but it is an arrangement of an existing song, so we'll call it a port. And duration, this is another thing that we can get from that stats document. I already have it open here, so let's find it. Again, this is the same place where we found our insert size, and we're looking for length and song total length in seconds. If you have an introduction, you're going to want this main loop length in seconds instead. But we don't have an extra introduction, so it's about 22 seconds. So we'll put 22 seconds, 022. And then I can add a description here. Again, people will be able to see this. And I'll just say first 7 measures of Bach Sinfonia 14. And the final thing I can do here is add tags. There's a list of tags right up here, official tag list. Again, since this is not a miscellaneous, we don't want to use those tags. So we're going to use these, and they give you all sorts of kinds of levels that people might associate with this music. Let's just call it town. That'll work as well as anything. It's a comma delineated list. And then, if everything is good to go, you can add some submission notes. These are things that won't be seen. Only the moderators will see these. And then you can click submit. I will not do that because nobody needs to see these random 7 measures of Bach, and I don't need to waste the moderator's time. But you click the submit button, and then once you've done that, your file will show up. If I go back to SMW music on the right here, go to show waiting files. It'll show up on this list. This is sort of SPC purgatory here, where music that has been submitted but hasn't been moderated yet first starts, and once it's moderated, it goes to show moderated files. It goes to here, and everybody can see it and listen to it and use it in their hacks. So in any case, again, no reason you have to submit stuff to SMW Central if you don't want to, but it's a good place to share it if you want people to know what you're doing. So I hope you've enjoyed that and found that helpful, and if it gets a few more people into making custom SMW music, that's all I'm going for here. So hope you can be part of it and contribute your musical talents to the scene. And until next time, I'll see you soon.